Hi everyone, it's Wednesday Warriors and it's me, Arielle. And today's topic is, what is your favorite accomplishment in recovery? So I get to talk about something really positive, which is cool, and we do have a really positive week all together. I have a few accomplishments that I'm proud of, and I don't say that to sound like a self-righteous sort of person or anything like that. It's just that when I think back to having my eating disorder and being in recovery and getting to the place where I am today, it seems like a completely different person who was struggling with the anorexia. So for me, when I'm talking about the greatest accomplishments, I feel like I'm talking about a different girl, a different woman, and it's not as though I'm tooting my own horn here, at my age right now. So, a few of the things that come to mind when I think about my greatest accomplishment are standing up to my father, and learning to understand that numbers don't matter at all and stopping the focus on numbers that I had. Another big accomplishment was realizing what my identity was, aside from being, the thinnest friend or the thinnest girl. And another big accomplishment was sort of dealing with the anxiety that I suffered from and being able to live and conquer the anxiety that I had. Now, I definitely still have a few anxiety issues, but really, really minor compared to what I used to deal with. So I think today, out of all those accomplishments, I'm just going to focus on the numbers aspect, because numbers used to be a huge part of my life, a huge part of my daily rituals, and I put way too much emphasis on them. And it really saddens me when I see other people put emphasis on numbers, and it's a really hard thing to break away from. I don't know what it is, but once you start focusing on the numbers, it just becomes this obsession that you can't pull yourself away from. So I'm going to focus on that today as, my biggest accomplishment in recovery, and talk a little bit about the anxiety piece as well. When I was in college, starting at age 18, I was so numbers conscious, and I don't really know how this started, but I do remember being home over a break when I was in my first year of college at age 18, and I just started this notebook where I kept track of every single thing I ate, and I tallied everything up, and I became completely obsessed with calories, and just for no apparent reason, I didn't want to go above certain numbers. And if I did, I was really cruel to myself in my mind and in the way that I treated myself as far as what I would allow myself to eat and drink. And it's so crazy to think about it now, because numbers are just numbers. They're nothing that should dictate your everyday life. And they really did control my everyday life. And I felt, by using the numbers and by putting so much stock in them, that I was keeping in control. But it's really the opposite. You're relinquishing your control to something else. And it took me a while to realize that. And then even when I had realized that, it took me a while to break away from the numbers anyway, because once you start doing something like that, it becomes just part of the way you are. And I wasn't only obsessed with calories. I counted everything I ate, of course, but I was obsessed with clothing sizes. I didn't want to go above a certain size. I wanted to have the clothes in my closet only be a particular size, and it was just completely unacceptable to me to move to a higher clothing size. I was also obsessed with the number on the scale. I mean, I would weigh myself constantly until my scale was taken away from me and I couldn't do that anymore, and then I learned to live without the scale. So these pieces, the calorie counting, I mean, I did that for a good long time, but basically I had to learn to eat when I was hungry, stop when I was full, not worry so much about the amount of calories, but the nutritional content in what I was eating, instead of just tallying things up nonsensically. Then the clothing size aspect, I mean, at one point, I took the tags out of all of my clothes. You know, I would try to make shopping trips enjoyable by going with someone that I knew would be, you know, really fun to be with, so that I didn't have to focus only on the size of the clothes that I was buying. As I was recovering, you know, I was gaining weight because my particular eating disorder was anorexia. So, I mean, I'm actually proud to say that my clothing size is now several sizes higher than the size that I used to be. And I mean, that's really saying something, because if I would have pictured myself saying that years ago when I was struggling, it just would have struck fear in my heart. It would have made me so anxious, so uncomfortable, so disgusted. And I was always one of those people that thought everyone else looked so perfect and so beautiful and didn't care at all what their clothing size was. But I only cared about it for myself. And it was just so weird. But the reason was because I considered it my identity to be this thin person. And I thought that if I gained weight and I treated myself better and was healthier, I wouldn't somehow be the same person. But I came to realize that wasn't true, because I didn't really want my identity to just be the thin girl or the thinnest friend that anyone had. I mean, a lot of people want to be that, but really at the core, who wants to be just that? So once I figured out who I was and who I wanted to become, it was a lot easier to let go of that anorexia and let go of that obsession with numbers. Going to a nutritionist didn't help me at first. I really disliked it, but once I was in a better mindset a couple years later and I went back to a nutritionist, it was good to get the encouragement each time I went. It was good to have somebody say, "Great job for eating what you ate, for doing what you did, for eating as much as you did." You know, instead of what the voice inside me was telling myself, which was that I had eaten too much. You know, so stopping the counting was very difficult, because counting was always a coping mechanism for me. I mean, you know, if I kept a journal or a notebook of everything I ate and tallied it up, when I would stop doing that and when I would start doing it again, I would know that it meant that something was amiss and that I wanted to be in control of something. I was somehow trying to make myself feel better by starting the counting of my calories again. So it was sort of like a trigger in my own brain to say, "Hey, Arielle, something's not right here. Why are you doing this again?" And then it would allow me to reflect and realize that there was something bigger than all of the numbers. The scale doesn't bother me at all anymore. I actually lived at least 3 years of my life without a scale in my house or apartment. Trying to think how many years it was, maybe 4 years, I don't know. I have a scale now. I didn't have a scale in my house for a couple of years, and then we got a scale, and it's sort of like I was away from it long enough and had mastered the obsession long enough that now I can have it, and if I step on it, you know, once in a few months, that's completely fine. And I don't need to weigh myself. If I see it there, it doesn't cause me to want to get on it. I don't care how much I weigh. I honestly don't, which is the most interesting thing about all of this, because I never wanted to be above a certain number with my weight, and I would argue with my therapist and I would argue with my nutritionist, and I would say, you know, I'll take care of myself and I'll get healthy and I'll keep eating, and, you know, I'll be okay, but I'm going to be on the thin end and I'm going to stay at, you know, below this weight. Any higher is just ridiculous for me. And I would argue and argue and argue and argue, and I know a lot of people do that too, especially if they have, you know, a more slender body type, but I'm a way above the number that I wanted to stop at, and I'm perfectly happy, and I think it looks good on me, and I'm happy with my life, and I'm happy with myself, and I like my body, because it really wasn't all about my body when all was said and done. It was more about just me, and my body was part of me, so I hated that too. There's only one way to do it. One day at a time. In a way, you're breaking yourself of a bad habit, if you want to look at it that way. when you're dealing with the numbers obsession and things like that. And realizing your self-worth apart from a number can be tricky. And it's horrible to say that because it's just outrageous that people would classify themselves and determine their self-worth by a number. But I was one of the people that definitely defined my self-worth by numbers in a lot of ways. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time.